to keep alive the traditions of family, loyalty, integrity, and honor that have sustained us in the past and made Wyoming great. We will build on our heritage and history with confidence that our future generations will be as proud of us as we are of our ancestors.
Some of my fondest memories of coming to the meeting before I was even old enough to realize how neat these meetings were is I would be 10, 12, following my granny around the fair, and we'd go to the quilt show, and we'd go down to the fair, and she'd drop me off at the carnival, and then she would say, well, make sure you make it back up here for Pioneer Day, and we'd go through the meeting. So I think that is part of the reason that the Wyoming Pioneer Association is so near and dear to my heart, is because the memories of my grandma.
They had quite some fairs here. They took the horse up on a pedestal, and he jumped. A woman was on the horse, and they dug a hole 40 foot deep, filled it with water. She jumped off the tower on the horse into the pool.
These things are tied with the state fair so that not only they can come, if they come to the annual meeting, then they can enjoy some part of the state fair. I think you have to know where you've been to have some understanding of where you're going to go.
You listen to the old timers talk, and they don't even realize that they lived through history and that they're talking about things that are absolutely fascinating. And you don't get that if you aren't there, if you aren't present, if you aren't spending the time with them.
When I was a kid, they were still shipping livestock on trains, and I got to see that, and that makes me feel like a pioneer that I trailed steers to the railroad.
I think if we take our today's society and reflect on the hardships that the people had then, and they survived, and they did well, and they promoted this idea to preserve history, it gives some incentive to our future people to say, hey, you know, let's preserve this heritage and keep it going.
When you come in and you see these artifacts, these buildings, you look at a cabin and you're like, oh, it was an old log cabin that people actually lived in. When you walk through a schoolhouse, they've worked so hard to set it up authentically like what an old school schoolhouse would be. I think that those things are important to preserve because how else are we supposed to envision the things that our family and our ancestors and that the people who came before us lived through?
I used to come home during the meetings and attend some of the meetings. In fact, I attended a meeting they had in this cabin, mid to late 80s, and it was very warm. It was in August, very warm and very crowded.
Gosh, just how much I appreciate the time that they put in and the response and the willingness to come to every annual meeting, the willingness to show up and just be part of our community, especially as we come up on 100 years. Every member is a valued member, and we do just appreciate them so much.
They used to give a rose to everyone that was 80 years old, and my mother wouldn't stand up and get her rose, and I was bugging her saying, stand up, get your rose. And she said, I don't look 80.
You know, it's our 100th year, so I thought, why not have a coin to celebrate our 100 years?
This cabin that we're in today, it was built as a meeting place for the pioneers. And they started out with an informal organization called the Old Timers. And then when they formally created the Pioneer Association in 1926, they then raised the funds and built this cabin. And then what, of course, happened was that this got filled with artifacts, and it kind of became a de facto museum to the point where it really wasn't functional for the association. Then there was a push to create the Wyoming Pioneer Museum.
They went to the legislature of the Wyoming in 1950 and 51 and appropriated the money to build the very first museum. So really our purpose of the association is to support the museum in their efforts.
Granny was always very involved in the Wyoming Pioneer Association, and she was a historian. I think that's part of the reason that I'm so passionate about history is because she loved finding these historical pieces. She had their home to the point that anyone who goes and visits it, they're like, this is like a museum. I really wish I had recorded my granny when she gave the tour. There's just so much history, again, that they don't even realize that they know, that they've memorized, that I could listen to it 1,000 times and it's not imprinted in my mind like it is theirs. So I have recorded people before just because that's knowledge that gets lost.
There's a lot of significant historical background just in the organization. My grandfather was in the legislature about the time this was formed, and he sponsored the legislation that created the Wyoming Landmark Commission. And that's where all the roadside markers, and they marked the trails, and they marked historical sites. And that's where that began.
My granny was one heck of a cook. I mean, she could put together a meal for 2 people on a moment's notice, or she and my grandpa would host 500 people. And I think that they lived by those values, not just within the association, but in their everyday life: family loyalty, integrity, to persevere. So I think if you take those values and you bring them into your everyday life, you're always going to make things better.
Well, I'm feeling it's an obligation to try to hold things together, to leave something for the future, because that's what it's all about.
If you think about how hard your ancestors worked to make things better for you, and if you carry that through, if you carry that torch on, my brother's daughter and son will be the 6th generation ranchers on our family's land. And that is possible because our ancestors had those values. They instilled those values in us. And I'm very confident that my brother will instill those values into his children. So,
In another 100 years, we may not all be here, but your grandkids will. Let's give them a challenge and say, hey, challenge you to have this thing here still in 100 years.